Somewhere in America right now, there's a sewing machine sitting in a closet, an attic, or a thrift store shelf, and its owner thinks it's a hidden treasure. Grandma's old machine. Heavy. Metal. They don't make 'em like this anymore. Right? Well, sometimes that's true. And sometimes, that machine is worth exactly what a scrapyard would pay you for the metal in it. Nothing more. Today, we're breaking down 7 sewing machines and entire families of machines that Sewists across the country are shocked to discover are basically worthless in 2026. Some were expensive when new. Some were sold by trusted names. All of them share the same fatal flaw. Stick around, because number 4 is one people are still buying brand new without knowing what's waiting for them in 5 years. And hey, quick thing before we dive in. If you love learning the real story behind these machines, the engineering, the history, the stuff dealers won't tell you, I put together something special for you. It's called The Greatest Sewing Library Online, and the link's in my bio if you ever want to go deeper. Okay, let's get into it. Why old doesn't mean valuable. Before we get to the list, let's clear something up because this trips up so many people. There's a myth floating around Facebook Marketplace and estate sales that says, if a sewing machine is old, it's automatically worth money. That is simply not true. Appraisal services that specialize in vintage machines are blunt about it. Some vintage and antique machines are essentially worthless flea market finds, while others are legitimately prized collector's items worth thousands. The difference comes down to brand, model, rarity, and condition, not just age. A machine could be from 1962, made of solid cast iron, still stitching perfectly, and still be worth $30 because millions of that exact model were made and nobody's fighting over it. Meanwhile, something like a Singer Featherweight 221 from the 1930s through the 1960s, a tiny, portable little machine, regularly sells for $300 to $800, with rare colors pushing past $1,000. Same era, wildly different outcome. So keep that in mind as we go through this list, because the worthless 7 aren't worthless because they're old. They're worthless for very specific, very avoidable reasons. Number 1. The generic department store singers of the 1970s and 80s. Let's start with the most common heartbreak in America, the Singer in Grandma's closet. Here's the brutal truth appraisers give people every single day. A generic Singer from the 1970s might only be worth $30 to $50. Not $300, not $800, $30 to $50. And that's if it's clean and running. Why? Because Singer, in that era, pumped out an enormous number of mid-tier, mass-market machines for department stores and catalog sales. They're not rare. They're not the featherweight. They're not a documented, celebrated design. They're just common. Supply and demand doesn't care about sentimental value, unfortunately, and when a model exists by the millions, the resale market simply floods. This is the number 1 reason so many sewing machine-worth videos and appraisal tools exist now. People inherit these machines convinced they've found a payday, and instead they find out it's a nice, functional machine for a beginner, worth about the same as a dinner out. Number 2. The Singer Touch and Sew family. This one stings a little more, because on paper, the Touch and Sew line looked incredible for its time. Built-in bobbin winding. Futuristic feel. Singer marketed it hard in the late 1960s and into the 70s as the machine of the future. But here's what happened behind the scenes. Singer was going through serious financial struggles in that era, and to cut costs, they started swapping metal internal parts, especially gears, for plastic and nylon versions. And the Touch and Sew family became ground zero for it. Repair shops today will tell you the Touch and Sew machines were the first generation to widely use these plastic and nylon gears, and it shows in the failure patterns they see decades later. Plastic gears sound fine in a showroom demo. They're quieter. They're lighter. They need less oil. But under real, repeated use over years and years, those teeth wear down, chip, or shatter outright. And once that happens, the machine doesn't just get quieter, it stops working. And a shocking number of Touch and Sew machines out there today are sitting exactly like that, cosmetically fine, mechanically dead. Some of the very early TNS models, like the 600 and 603, are believed to still have metal gears, so if you've got one of those specific numbers, you might be one of the lucky ones. But the broader family? Buyer and seller beware. Number 3. Low-end Kenmore models with the infamous plastic-on-metal gear. Now, Kenmore, Sears house brand, actually has a really strong reputation among vintage machine collectors overall. Most of them are described as extremely well-built and reliable, machines people happily use for charity sewing groups decades later. But there's a specific weak point that repair techs and collectors talk about again and again. Certain low-end Kenmore models, specifically ones like the 148, 12210, and the 158, 12470, used a plastic gear paired with a pot metal part underneath the zigzag actuator. And here's the kicker. When techs go in to proactively replace that plastic gear with a metal one, the surrounding pot metal part frequently cracks or breaks during the very process of trying to save the machine. One collector documented buying the replacement metal gear, disassembling the machine carefully, and watching the old pot metal housing crack anyway. And this happened to 2 separate people, with 2 separate machines, within weeks of each other. That's not bad luck. That's a design flaw. Because these particular models were also fairly basic, just a handful of built-in stitches, no fancy cam functions. Most repair people don't consider them worth saving once that failure happens. They become donor machines, parted out for their motor, their pedal, their tension assembly, and the shell gets tossed. Structurally worthless as a whole unit, even though individual pieces still have value. Number 4. The New Home/Janome 632C. This one's important because it's a warning about a brand that otherwise has an excellent reputation. Janome, under the New Home name, built the 632C as a solid, flatbed, forward-facing machine with useful utility stitches, stretch stitch capability, and even double needle support. On paper, and honestly in the hand, it feels like a great, sturdy, aluminum-bodied machine. But it has plastic gears buried inside. And here's a first-hand account from someone deep in the vintage machine world. The 632C works beautifully right up until those gears wear out, and then it doesn't gracefully decline. It just fails. Skipped stitches. Fabric getting chewed up mid-seam.
Stalling.
Jamming. One long-time collector says he went through 5 of these machines in half a year, several of which looked barely used before they hit him, and that experience was enough to make him swear off plastic gear machines completely. The lesson here isn't avoid Janome. It's know your specific model. Because plastic gear failure doesn't care how good the rest of the machine is. Number 5. Older computerized Pfaff machines with dead circuit boards. Now we move into the modern era of worthless, and this is the one that should really make today's buyers pay attention. Pfaff built genuinely excellent machines for decades. Some owners are still running 27-year-old Pfaffs like the 1475 and 1473 that perform like dreams. But once you cross into the computerized generation, you introduce an entirely new failure point: the circuit board. Longtime Pfaff owners on sewing forums describe the same nightmare scenario over and over. The machine, often around 20 years old, suddenly starts misbehaving, needle position glitching, stitches malfunctioning, and a repair shop diagnoses a fried computer board. The repair quote? Often north of $600. For a machine that might not even be worth that much on the resale market anymore. And here's the deeper problem. The one that's genuinely spooking longtime sewists. A trade specialist who's been in the sewing machine and vacuum business for over 95 years has pointed out that Pfaff, as a company, has been bought and sold multiple times over the past decade, and increasingly common replacement parts are simply becoming unavailable. His example, a $1 needle plate clip going out of production, rendering a $4,000 machine completely unusable. When a part that small can brick a machine that expensive, you start to understand why 15 to 25-year-old Pfaffs are seen as ticking clocks rather than heirlooms. Number 6. Older computerized Husqvarna Viking machines. Viking gets grouped right alongside Pfaff here, and for good reason. They're actually owned by the same parent company, and they share a lot of the same computerized era vulnerabilities. Sewists on quilting forums have started describing their higher-end, feature-loaded machines in a very specific way. They're computers. And computers have a shelf life. One experienced owner points out that circuit boards on machines like this are often only warranted for around 5 years, and when one fails outside that window, it becomes a major expense, not a simple fix. There's also a technical reality that makes this worse than a home PC problem. On older machines, some circuit boards can be repaired by an electronics technician the old-fashioned way, swapping out a bad component. But newer boards are often manufactured using methods that aren't accessible to a repair shop at all. They're built in specialized, sealed environments. When one of those dies, the honest answer from your dealer is often just buy a new machine because manufacturing doesn't support fixing that one anymore. So an older, well-loved Viking or Husqvarna with a screen full of embroidery patterns and computerized stitch settings can go from the machine of my dreams to a very heavy paperweight the moment that board fails. And depending on the model's age, finding a replacement board might range from expensive to flatly impossible. Number 7. Discount budget and TOI grade machines. And finally, the category that catches beginners more than anyone else, the ultra-cheap, big-box, budget sewing machines, the kind marketed heavily around back-to-school and holiday season, built almost entirely from lightweight plastic, inside and out. Repair professionals who've been in the trade for decades are pretty candid about this trend. When manufacturers switched to plastic gears originally, the pitch was that it would be quieter and require less maintenance, and for higher-end machines using quality plastics, that's genuinely held up reasonably well. But at the absolute bottom of the market, that same plastic-heavy construction is paired with weaker overall build quality, thinner frames, and components that just weren't designed for years of steady, everyday use. The result is a machine that might sew beautifully for a birthday project or two, and then start skipping stitches, jamming, or losing tension entirely within a year or two of regular sewing. These machines were never built with resale in mind, and it shows. Appraisal guides are consistent that generic, mass-market, budget-tier machines have minimal resale value from day one, let alone after they've been used hard. They're essentially disposable, which is fine if you know that going in, but a rough surprise if you paid real money expecting an heirloom. The bonus myth: my Treadle machine must be worth a fortune. Quick bonus round, because this comes up constantly in the comments of videos just like this one. People inherit a beautiful old cast-iron Treadle machine, ornate cabinet, gorgeous decals, foot pedal and all, and assume it's a gold mine. Sometimes, yes. Antique Treadle machines with rare features, intact cabinets, and real collector demand can be worth real money. But the overwhelming majority of Treadle machines that survive today were mass-produced by the hundreds of thousands in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And the honest reality from longtime collectors is that on any given day, a machine is worth exactly what a specific buyer will pay a specific seller in a specific marketplace. Condition, rarity, region, and timing all matter more than the simple fact of being old. A common, incomplete, or heavily worn Treadle machine can genuinely be close to worthless as a functional object, sometimes valuable only for scrap metal, or to someone hunting for spare parts for a better example of the same machine. What actually holds value so you know what to look for? Now that we've covered the heartbreakers, let's end on something useful. If you're wondering what actually retains value in this market, the pattern is pretty consistent across appraisers and dealers. Modern heavy-duty machines built for thick fabrics like denim and leather tend to hold value well with today's crafting community. Iconic, rare vintage pieces, like the Singer Featherweight line, hold strong collector demand specifically because of their compact design and cultural reputation. And in the modern computerized space, premium lines from Bernina, Juki, Brothers Luminaire series, and Janome's Memory Craft line tend to hold their value better than budget competitors, alongside industrial machines built for working professionals. The through line across literally everything we covered today? Plastic gears designed to save manufacturing costs, computer boards with a hidden expiration date, and mass-produced budget models that were never built to last. That's the recipe for a worthless machine. Metal construction, strong brand reputation, and genuine rarity. That's the recipe for something worth holding on to. So, did any of these 7 surprise you? Do you own one, or maybe even used to own one before it quietly died on you? I want to hear about it. Drop a comment and tell me which one hit closest to home, because I read every single one of them. And if this saved you from making a mistake, or just scratched that curiosity itch, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow. Subscribe if you want more deep dives into the sewing machines nobody's talking about, and I will see you in the next one. Happy sewing, everyone!